News on Jaylen McCollough. Quick takes brought to you by Craft Treats. Go to Craft Treats, use the code Off the Hook, get a 20% discount on the chill pills that'll help your pet with digestive issues or arthritis, or how about anxiety? They have that too. So, Josh Heupel just meeting with the media moments ago, Caleb, and the news is Jaylen McCollough. It looks as if he will be ready sooner than later to go after being charged with aggravated assault on October. That would be would be 2 Sundays ago, so October the 9th. So that to me is good news for Tennessee's secondary, Caleb. That they performed admirably. Don't get me wrong against Alabama, but it's still a position that's not going to blow your skirt up, as they like to say.
No, I totally agree. I think the secondary has some major issues, and Jaylen McCollough being back is a big deal. I think a big part of that is what McCollough can do in the run game, honestly. I think that there are a lot of design blitzes Tim Banks uses where he sends Jaylen McCollough on, and he would have been the most athletic one who was also physically gifted enough to maybe slow down some of that Bryce Young mobility over the weekend.
Mm-hmm.
But again, I think the good news is Tennessee's not going to face Bryce Young again the rest of the year either. So,
That's true. I thought he was worth 20 or more points in that game. I just thought he was fantastic. You and I are both very high on Bryce Young, so are the Heisman voters, because he won the Heisman last year. He was asked specifically about, was this an administration decision to suspend him, or was this suspension just a football-related suspension? And he kind of dodged it. He said he's not suspended at all. He didn't play against Alabama, so you can say it however you want to, but he was at least suspended for the Alabama game, unless there's a mystery injury that we don't know about.
Yeah, I agree. I think I just read Wes Rucker on Twitter for a minute ago, and he said that his takeaway is kind of the same as mine, which is that it sounds like the coaches believe Jaylen McCollough's version of events that happened. They just can't come out and say it right now because there's a legal process. But that's what that gives the vibe to. And they made it sound like they expect him back on the field this week, which is, kind of crazy. So I agree. I don't know if it was it sounds like it may have been an administrative decision based on just talking to the police saying, hey, you may have to keep this guy out for a little while until this gets cleared up. But it sounds like it may get cleared up more quickly than we thought. But yeah, I agree. That was a really weird answer Heupel gave.
Yeah, and it happened Sunday afternoon. So let's think about this pragmatically, whether or not he did something worth being suspended for. Okay, so there's a lot of gray area. The drunk guy admittedly had been drinking all day long, and he comes into the wrong room, and Jaylen McCollough supposedly goes after him 25, 30 feet. The guy said, you don't have to make a big deal about it. We don't know what was said. The guy may have called him a bleepity bleep. I don't know. So I think there's a lot of gray area. I don't know how guilty Jaylen McCollough is. He is guilty, I think, based off reports of punching him in the face. The guy apparently fell down the stairs and was missing teeth and bloodied. But let's look at this really pragmatically. So with Jaylen McCollough, you don't find out about this until Sunday night. You've got a game plan to put in for Alabama. So before we go down the road of the administration said, Josh Heupel, you have to sit him down, it may have been a really pragmatic decision of, hey, you're not going to know for 2 or 3 days how bad this is. Let's just get ready to play without him. And so whether or not it was an administration decision or a pragmatic decision, he didn't play against Alabama. Whether or not you want to call that suspended or not, that was suspended, Caleb.
I agree. And that's actually a good point. I didn't think about that. They didn't want their preparation to be messed with any more than it already was because they didn't know which quarterback they were going to face last week. So I think you're right. The combination of those things made them probably just sit him out. And I will say, it's watching the game last week. I kept talking about how rough it would be for Tennessee without Jaylen McCollough because they're already without Warren Borrella cornerback. By the way, they were also, I think, without Kamal Hadden in that game, who was their number 2 cornerback. Mm-hmm. And another one of their quarterbacks got hurt in the game. I want to say it was, or defensive backs. I want to say it was Christian Charles.
Yes.
Yes. And so they were really shorthanded. And quite honestly, watching that game, I mean, I don't think the secondary played particularly good. Obviously, I think they played pretty poorly. But I also say that I think a lot of what happened was way more just about what Bryce Young did. I just don't think there was a defense that could have stopped him in what he did. I just think he was that elite on
Well,
Saturday.
and I've said this 3 or 4 times on 3 or 4 different shows. Tim Banks deserves huge monster credit for the defensive stunt package, the blitz package that he put together. And let's give Tennessee's players some credit. They're playing like their hair's on fire on defense, especially with the front 7. So, or front 6 now that we have a nickelback all the time, whatever you want to call it. But that's the way they're playing football right now. So kudos to them. Kudos to Banks for overcoming the shortcomings of the secondary. Because if you didn't know any better and you just tuned in and that was the first Tennessee game that you saw and you'd read the preseason magazines and the predictions and the stuff we put together, you would have thought that was one of the best defensive fronts in the SEC, if not the nation. Bryce Young kept those plays alive. If that's a regular dude, we're talking about 3, 4, 5 sacks like Tennessee got against LSU.
Yeah, I agree. I think, and it's funny because you go back and watch Jeremy Banks on Saturday, who I think was the best defensive player in the game. I mean, Tim Banks called brilliant design blitzes with him, and Banks had, I think he got credited with like 4 hurries. I swore he got more hurries than that, but he was covering the gaps really well too. Banks is the reason Alabama had those the first and third drive stall in the first half. It was the hurries he got on Bryce Young. And I think that I'm with you, particularly there were a couple of plays where either I think it was Tyler Barron had Bryce Young and Young was just too athletic. But I think Tennessee played very well up front. I think there were some issues on the defensive line. I really give credit to the linebackers and the way they rush the passer and close the gaps. I thought that was the most impressive thing of the day for Tennessee's defense. I think as for Jaylen McCollough in the secondary, I think that a game actually, funny enough, like Kentucky is going to be, or Georgia is going to be where he matters more, because this is so weird to say. I mean, I can't believe I'm saying this, but Kentucky's going to have 2 weeks to prepare for Tennessee. And Mark Stoops is he's a defensive genius. I do think that. I've always been high on Mark Stoops as a defensive guy. Kirby Smart's a great defensive coordinator and is just loaded with talent on defense. So I actually think those 2 games might be a little bit more, I mean, they just will be more difficult for Tennessee's offense than Alabama was. And I think so if the secondary has issues in those games, which they would without Jaylen McCollough, then the pressure will again be on the offense to do what it did on Saturday, and it may have a bit of a harder time.
Well, Josh Heupel wasn't asked about Cedric Tillman. I think the obvious reason why is it's UT Martin. Why would you play him this week?
Yeah, unless you're trying to get him some sort of rhythm, get his feet wet before Kentucky. I don't know why you play him at all. I do understand that need, though. I remember when in the NFL, you've heard players say all the time after long injuries, they want to play in the preseason. There's this whole, do you play a player who was hurt in the preseason or not when they're coming off of injury? And the players will usually be like, I need to play because I need to get hit. I need to get used to what it feels like to get hit before I get back out there again. And if there was ever a time for Tillman to deal with that, it was this game, or it's this game.
Yeah, I don't think he wants to get hit. I don't think he wants to get hit. I don't think he wants that ankle to get hit. So I think he's going to sit for this game and probably be available, I would think, next week based off of timing. But we shall see. It's a Tennessee football team that it continues to ride high after, of course, the Alabama win, and did so with a depleted secondary. Again, players all across the board on the defensive front, I thought just absolutely played just lights out. And from an emotional standpoint, a go after them standpoint, I thought the dumbest question that I heard, and I'll leave you with this, was did Tennessee, this was the press conference following the game, and someone asked, what did you guys do to really dial it up there at the end? That's how they played the whole time. That defensive,
that's legit Tennessee's whole offense.
Yeah, that or defense.
Yes, defense. Yeah.
Yeah. So that defensive stunt blitz package was marvelous. marvelous by Tim Banks, and the players played incredibly hard throughout. They just happened to get a stop on that particular drive. It wasn't anything special that they did on that last drive that Alabama ended up missing a field goal on.
No, not at all. As a matter of fact, the thing that helped them on that last drive was there was a drop pass over the middle on a perfect throw by Bryce Young. And I'm like, and by the way, let's be clear on that. That's still a testament to Tennessee's defense. I think we talked about this when they were playing Florida a couple of weeks ago with Tim Banks. Tim Banks understands the weaknesses of the secondary. So Tennessee's best chance to get a stop is to make you move the ball downfield. And the more you have to move the ball downfield, the more plays you have to run, the more likely you are to have a mistake or a miscue here or there. And it's completely opposite from I don't think Heupel's happy if his team takes more than 6 plays to score a touchdown on a drive.
You're right. I think you're absolutely right. Caleb Calhoun will join us on Tuesday. We will be live with you from 8:30 to 10 each and every weekday. So we encourage you to check us out there. Please hit that like, share, and subscribe button. Also, we would love it if you'd set those notifications on so that you know when we're on. For Caleb Calhoun, I'm Dave Hooker. This has been